How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is PSReady, my channel all about PlayStation. I hope you had a great weekend playing a ton of video games. Nothing crazy in my rotation. I'm still working through Atomfall, and then I picked up Donkey Kong Country Returns HD on my Nintendo Switch because I just love Donkey Kong, and that game's awesome. If you have a Switch, I don't know if it's worth 60 bucks because it's kind of a bad remake, but I got it for 35 and I feel like it was worth it. In today's video, we've got 3 topics to cover. Thankfully, Sony has prepared for the tariff situation, so a price hike is not imminent on the PlayStation 5. Then we got to talk about how Sony desperately wants to know what you think of the Nintendo Switch 2. And finally, Sony is paying the price for another bad port. They gotta figure this out. All right, let's jump into this first news story here because all the news with the tariffs exploded over the weekend. Trump put tariffs on so many different countries around the world. People are like, oh, is he just waiting for them to reduce their tariffs or get rid of them? Is he going to keep the tariffs in place? Who the hell knows? But obviously people are upset about this in the gaming world. Like Nintendo, they pulled pre-orders in the United States for the Nintendo Switch 2 because they don't know how much the tariffs are going to affect the component costs or shipping things from Japan to the United States or Vietnam, wherever they're made, to the United States. So they're saying, hey, we're going to pump the brakes on the pre-orders. I would guess that they're just rapidly shipping as many Nintendo Switch 2s over to the United States as they can so that those tariffs don't really affect them. But like over here in PlayStation land, everyone's kind of been wondering how this is going to affect us. And that's fair. That makes sense because we don't know. The games aren't made here in the United States. They're not printed here. They're printed in Mexico. And that sucks for people who like buying physical games because they're either going to be more expensive, like those fake rumors that exploded about the Switch 2 charging 90 bucks for physical games that got spread around by insider gaming. The consoles obviously aren't made anywhere close to the United States, right? Like they make the chips in Taiwan, then they ship them, I think, to Vietnam for everything to be assembled. Then it gets packed on a boat and it gets shipped to the United States. So you're going to pay double tariffs technically, I would guess, because Taiwan is paying a tariff, then Vietnam is paying a tariff. It's just a huge mess. But thankfully, Sony has figured out a way to circumvent this, and that's by shipping a bunch of PlayStation 5s and PlayStation 5 Pros to the United States for months now. They've been acting on this for a while. I actually talked about it, I think, back in January when this all started to kind of rise up in the news cycle. They started shipping a bunch of PS5s over here. So at least for the time being, it's not really going to be that effective putting the tariffs on these consoles because those consoles won't be tariffed. They'll be able to be sold at $450 or $500 depending on which one you buy, or $700 if you're buying a PS5 Pro. I would hope that they ship things like accessories like the PS Portal, the Pulse Explorer, the Pulse Elite, DualSense Edge. I hope they also stockpiled a ton of those over here as well, because if they didn't, you know, it's going to be a price increase probably for everyone across the board. And that sucks because not only are things getting more expensive, a lot of people's 401ks are dropping, they're getting scared, and we already have an issue where people aren't buying games. Like there's a lot of uncertainty in the games world right now, and I understand why. I have noticed there are suddenly a ton of tariff experts out there. I don't think anyone really knows anything about tariffs, honestly, because they haven't really been relevant in a long time, at least to this degree. So don't let the news and the Twitter and everything kind of scare you into thinking consoles are going to be $10,000 because that's never going to happen. They're not going to spend the time, energy, and money into producing these things if they are going to cost that much. I'm sure something will be figured out. You know, like all these news sites that are writing up all these insane stories, either side of the aisle, they're just trying to do the same thing that Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft are doing, which is drive engagement. They want you clicking, they want you reading, they want you watching. So the best way to do that is to scare people. Honestly, it's not worth giving yourself a headache over until there's something worth having a headache over. And as of right now, the PS5 prices are staying the same. And that's good because the PS5 is cheaper than a Nintendo Switch 2. Now, I mean, it's not apples to apples. The Switch 2 has a screen built in, has the controller built in. It comes with a dock. Nintendo's obviously putting a little bit of a Nintendo tax on there, but still, for the graphics potential of the PlayStation 5, it's pretty like much a no-brainer, right? Like that's awesome that the things are that equivalent in price. So it's good to see that Sony shipped so many of these consoles over here so they can keep that price, especially when Nintendo's got their hands up in the air saying, we don't even know when we're going to let people pre-order this thing. So is it something to really get upset about? Is it something to worry about? I don't know. I'm not really the guy to tell you. I don't have an economics degree. I study this stuff from time to time as like a hobby. I like reading into things and how everything's working. But like my personal take on stuff like this is don't let it become a problem until it's a problem, because if it does become a problem, it's still going to be a problem tomorrow that you can solve whenever you want, right? Like, it's not worth getting upset over something that's supposed to be a fun, enjoyable, entertaining hobby. And that's exactly what video games is. So like, let this stuff roll off your back for now. And then if something does go crazy, you know, you'll hear about it first here on PSReady. But I briefly mentioned the Nintendo Switch 2 in the first story. We got to talk about it a little bit more in this video. Sony's been doing these surveys where they send them out to random PlayStation users. And the latest one is all about handhelds. They're trying to gauge interest in the Nintendo Switch 2. And in addition to that, they're also trying to gauge interest in handhelds, which is good on two fronts. They're asking people how likely they are to buy a Nintendo Switch 2. I really don't know why they're worried about this, because the Switch 2 clearly is going for a different audience, right? Like, I know they have games like Cyberpunk 2077. I know they have games coming like Elden Ring. The Duskbloods look cool, but like, I feel like those games for Switch owners are just a bonus, right? Like, they're for people who stayed on the Nintendo Switch the entire generation, the entire 8 years, and didn't get games like Cyberpunk or Elden Ring on that console, so they never played them because they don't have a PC, they don't have an Xbox, they don't have a PlayStation 5. That's what these games are for, right? Like, that's why they're $70. They know that there's an audience there of people who did not get to experience these games. So as far as Nintendo's concerned, or From Software or CD Projekt Red, they're new customers, so they can charge a new price for a new game, because to these people, it is a new game. But like, for everyone else, I'd argue the vast majority, you know, the people who like playing AAA games with insane graphics, insane performance, they like having the cutting edge stuff as fast as possible. I feel like third-party stuff like Elden Ring, Cyberpunk, and, you know, the Duskbloods, when it eventually comes out on other systems, because it will, you want a PS5 for that, right? Like, your options are play Elden Ring at like Steam Deck settings at 30 FPS that fluctuates wildly. Like, watch the trailer for the Switch version. It is dropping major frames. Or you could have played it like, what, 2 years ago, and you could have played the DLC last summer on your PS5 and had a great experience. Like, I feel like that's a no-brainer. For me personally, I think having a Switch and a PS5 is like the best option possible. You get all the first-party Sony stuff, you get all the first-party Xbox stuff, you get the third-party games running as good as possible, in some cases running better than PC. Not saying looking better. I know if you have a 5090 or whatever, you're going to be able to push better graphics on the PS5, but PS5 does not have the major stuttering issues that PC has. So like, PS5 is a great option for an everything console. You get all the exclusives except Nintendo. You keep the Switch around for that. That's what I do. It's great. I play games like Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. I go back and I play Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze. I played Mario Wonder a couple of years ago whenever that came out, and then it's fine. It just sits there docked on my TV when I'm not using it. Then when there's a first party game I want to play, sometimes I'll let them build up in the background and I go through a Switch sort of binge. I have the Switch there. And then when I want to play literally anything else, I've got my Steam Deck or my PlayStation 5. It's a great ecosystem to have. I mean, the only console that really seems to have no place is the Xbox, because you could buy all the games on Steam, you can buy all the games on PlayStation 5, and it's just going to get easier to do that. So I don't really want to pit the PS5 and the Switch against each other, because like everyone says about the Steam Deck and the Switch 2, they're going for completely different audiences, and they should be talked about that way. But yeah, this survey is super exciting to me because Sony's clearly interested in a handheld. I feel like Nintendo doing a dedicated handheld, the Steam Deck being pretty performant and actually selling pretty well for something that's only sold on Steam, has zero marketing, and is 3 years old. Like, Sony is just sitting this out for no reason, and they finally have gotten to the point where they can make a console, a handheld, that'll run the same games as their home console, so they only have to worry about developing one game and making sure it can be downsampled to run on a handheld. And then if it can't, you just stream it with remote play like you do on the PS Portal. It honestly seems like a no-brainer. And with how well the PS Portal sells, being just a streaming console, I feel like if they do put out this one that they're working on, like if it actually goes through, they develop it, they get it out there into the world, I feel like it has the best chance to succeed of any Sony handheld ever. I mean, PSP, nostalgia wise, tough to beat, but if you can get one that runs console games like the Switch 2 does, I mean, that's awesome. I feel like Sony's premium hardware will just go 10 miles longer than the Switch 2 will as well. I would love to have one of those, and I love the Steam Deck. Like, that's the only thing that could potentially rip me away from the Steam Deck in terms of being a handheld. And it's going to be tough, but Sony could make me split my time between a PS5 handheld and a Steam Deck. So it's good to see Sony's gauging interest in this at the end of the day. I'm curious and excited to see how this all shakes out. But yeah, and that brings me to the third news story of this video, which is Sony is getting bit in the ass for another bunk PC port, which is The Last of Us Part 2. I was really holding out for this PC port after the complete disaster of a launch of the first Last of Us game. So I talked about this before, but Iron Galaxy finished the port, I guess. I talked about it as if they made the entire port. Allegedly, what happened is Naughty Dog got it like 3/4 of the way there, and Iron Galaxy cleaned up the work, so people kind of pushed back on me for criticizing Iron Galaxy. Iron Galaxy's PC ports suck. Like, yeah, they've done good things in the past for other consoles, but the list of PC ports they've ruined is much larger than the ones that they put out that are good. So I was excited to see that Nix's was working on The Last of Us Part 2's PC port, but it looks like, once again, just like with Spider-Man 2, either Sony isn't giving them the resources and the time they need to finish these ports, or these games are just too big to port to PC, because the medium textures, the medium settings on PC, according to Digital Foundry, look worse in a lot of cases than they do on the PS4. The shader compilation does not do all the shaders, so you get stuttering. There's weird glitchiness where the horse flies all over the map. There's graphical bugs galore. Like, apparently this has been done for over a year, and Sony's just been sitting on it to release it closer to the show. And it's a bummer, because The Last of Us Part 1 remake, even with its terrible garbage tier launch on PC, it's still played by thousands of people every day, and this one was not able to beat its record. I think the original game launched and peaked at like 36,000 players on PC, and this one got to 35K. That's about half of what the best ones did, like God of War and Ghost of Tsushima. I think those were around 70 to 75K. And then Helldivers 2 blew them all out of the water with a peak concurrent of 485,000 people playing all at once. So it just goes to show, when Sony puts effort in and actually finishes their ports like they did with Ghost of Tsushima and God of War, they reap the rewards. Like, literally by 2 times. Like, they get 2 times as many players. But when you get these news stories out there that say, hey, this is not a good port, and they're selling it for close to full price, why would anyone in their right mind buy it? There's already enough bad ports on PC. People show up for good ports. So Sony's got to figure this out. Like, if they're going to be in the PC marketplace, they've got to have performant ports. There's no ifs, ands, or buts or any way around it. But the silver lining is this one actually runs pretty decent on Steam Deck from what I've seen. It has a Steam Deck preset that's mostly low settings with FSR enabled, but even at low settings, it looks pretty equivalent to the PS4 version. Like, a lot of the medium stuff is just the low setting, like the medium settings don't work. So if you have a Steam Deck and you want to play one of the best, graphically speaking, intensive games ever, play it on the Steam Deck. I got this on PS5. I was like, this is a console game through and through. No Return just got an update that added more characters. I love the No Return mode. It's cheaper on PS5 as well. I paid $10 for it. I ended up double dipping to get it on disc, but I paid $10 originally. This is where the console is the best, man. Like, you don't have to wait forever for the ports. You don't got to pay close to full price for them, and they look and run freaking incredible on the PS5. Like, there's literally no downside outside of you can't play it on a handheld outside of your house. But I've been telling people for months on my other channel, Deck Ready, don't go into The Last of Us Part 2 expecting a great experience on Steam Deck. Like, I think it robs you of the great experience that game is to play it at the lowest settings possible. It's a graphical powerhouse and a graphical showcase for the console, even if it is a PS4 game that got remastered at the end of the day. Anyway, guys, that's all I've got for you in this early week update here on PS Ready. I hope you're having a great week. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.